Weather and staffing issues caused hundreds of flights to be delayed or canceled at the peak of the holiday travel season, and passengers flying with Sunwing were left stranded with no way to get home. Traveling by rail, not any better. More than a dozen via trains in Ontario and Quebec were stuck, some for 18 hours. Tomorrow, MPs on the Transport Committee will hold an urgent meeting to try and hold someone accountable. The Minister of Transport, Omar Alghabra, will likely be called, and I spoke to him a little bit earlier this morning. Minister Alghabra, good morning to you.
Good morning, Rosemary.
So you've said this past week that your department has a plan or is putting together a plan to strengthen air passengers' protection rules. What, in your mind, needs to be done here? What needs to be strengthened?
First of all, Rosemary, the plan started right after the summer ordeal where we saw a lot of disruptions to air traffic and air travel. There were some lessons learned. As you know, this pandemic happens once 100 years, and it caused a lot of disruptions and shook the industry. Certainly stress tested the system, including the passenger bill of rights. And we discovered that there are some areas that we can improve on it. And one of them was making sure that the airlines have the onus on them to compensate passengers when flights are canceled or delays or luggage are lost. So we are looking at how we can strengthen that burden. We're looking at how we can streamline and make the process for the Canadian Transportation Agency much more efficient so they can process complaints faster. We're looking at adding more resources. We're looking at sharing more information, requiring the information sharing between different agencies within the aviation sector. So there's several things that, based on the lessons we learned from the last summer.
So does that mean that the passenger bill of rights right now is not an effective tool in your mind, even though you guys created it?
No, the passenger bill of rights, by the way, was when it came into force in 2019, just before the pandemic, was the first time in Canada's history to have a regime like that to protect passengers. However, as I said, the pandemic was unforecasted and unexpected, and it caused significant and severe disruption to our industry and taught us certain lessons that no one foresaw. So we learned some lessons, and I think any responsible government admits that there are some lessons learned and works on improving the regime that we have.
So we looked at the enforcement that's been done by the CTA that implements this and that you go to complain about if you're a passenger. They've only issued $43,000 in total of fines against airlines for flight delays and cancellations. There's a backlog, as you I'm sure know, of more than 30,000 complaints against airlines, sometimes taking a year and a half to resolve. Is the Canadian Transportation Agency not working as it should?
First of all, we set up the system removed from politics at an arm's length. That's how we do things when it comes to judicial or quasi-judicial bodies. The CTA has the authority to investigate and levy fines. As far as the volume concerned, no one forecasted and saw what we saw last summer. So clearly, the way the process was set up was not able to deal with the avalanche of complaints that took place. So now we are working with the CTA to ensure that they have the resources and the tools necessary to process complaints faster and smarter.
But to your point, if you want the onus to be on airlines and not on passengers, which I think passengers would agree with, should the fines not be higher? For instance, Air Canada agreed to a $4.5 million settlement to resolve a U.S. Department of Transportation investigation about delays and problems there. So if the onus were to be on the airlines to do anything before it gets to the complaint area, would the fines not have to be higher? Are you willing to consider that and offer that to the Canadian Transportation Association?
Rosemary, that's one of the things we're looking at. The other thing we're looking at is we want to create incentives for airlines to settle complaints before they go to the Canadian Transportation Agency. I want customers to be responded to as quickly as possible. I want to avoid going to the CTA. So we're looking at figuring out how we can create incentives for the airlines or discouragement for the airlines to refer or defer these complaints to the CTA.
Well, why would airlines need incentive? Isn't the market incentive? Why wouldn't they get punishment for not trying to deal with a complaint as opposed to incentives?
Yeah, I mean, those are questions that should be directed to the airline. I'm not here as a spokesperson for the airlines. However, what I'm trying to do is make it harder for the airlines to delay dealing with these complaints. That's the incentives that I'm looking for.
Okay, I want to turn to Via Rail because it wasn't obviously just planes that had some issues. This holiday, people faced some major delays on on trains. They had to sit there for hours and hours and hours. They felt abandoned. And Via, as you know, is a Crown corporation. It's not a private company like Sunwing or other airlines that you're trying to encourage or try to treat their passengers better. The board of directors reports to the government. That is something you can do. Are you considering any changes to the head of Via?
First of all, Rosemary, let me just say what happened to those Via passengers were totally unacceptable. To be waiting on the train for 19 hours without information or supplies is totally unacceptable, and it should not have happened. And then again, I'm not minimizing the challenges that Via had faced, where the 401 was shut down, weather was extreme. I understand all of that, but what had happened should not have happened. There is ongoing review right now where we are looking at what happened and what gaps Via needs to close when it comes to their operation and preparation planning. Second, there is currently an interim CEO. There is an opening for CEO. We're looking to hire a brand new CEO and there's a big project that we're also embarking on, building a designated track for Via so we can have a high frequency rail that connects the busiest corridor. So there's a lot of exciting news coming, but what had happened then was unacceptable, and we are working on addressing what had happened.
Fair to say, though, Minister, the interim CEO will not be the future CEO, given what happened.
Rosemary, I don't really want to talk about human resources issues publicly. But what I want to reassure you and the audience is that there is a strong commitment on the part of our government to make sure that Via learns from these lessons and that we have exciting future for Via, for passengers, for Canadians, and that we are committed to building and enhancing.
I want to end on PS 752, if I can, because today is the 3-year anniversary, of course, of the downing of that international airlines flight. 55 Canadians, 30 permanent residents were among the people killed in that. For 3 years, as you know, there's been a long list of demands from those families. They haven't all been met. And one that they feel very strongly about is directly related to your ministry, and that is that the UN Aviation Agency that Canada sits on condemn the flight's downing. And they believe that would be important. Why won't Canada bring a motion like that forward to this UN Council? Is that something that you are looking to do, Minister?
Rosemary, I've been involved in this tragedy since its beginning, when Iran shot down that flight. At the time, I was parliamentary secretary to the Prime Minister, and I've been working closely with the family on this issue. Look, every anniversary is a difficult anniversary, and I can tell you I am personally committed to doing everything we can, and I can, to holding Iran accountable. At ICAO, at the International Civil Aviation Organization, I've brought up condemnation of Iran on multiple occasions for shooting down that plane. We're working with the coordinating group of other countries like the UK, Sweden, and Ukraine on addressing and utilizing all existing processes to holding Iran accountable. I know the process is complicated. I know the process sometimes can be seen to be slow, but we want to follow the rules so we can make sure that we hold Iran accountable internationally and publicly.
Okay. Minister Alghabra, thank you for making the time. I appreciate it, sir.
Thank you very much.